This Pennywise recaps, and today we're reviewing the romance thriller Original Sin. Get ready for incredible plot twists. Luis Antonio Vargas is a pragmatic man. He firmly believes that he is incapable of falling in love, and marriage is a kind of cooperation. When Luis arrives to meet his future wife, he is surprised to see a woman other than the one in the photo. Julia explained to him that she did not want him to choose her simply because of her looks. She wanted Luis to like her inner world. Although Luis himself is not a good guy, he hid the fact that he owned a business from his future wife. The two of them went to Luis' estate and got married in a church. Luis and Julia organized a wedding, and after the wedding, they went to sleep in different rooms. Julia made it clear that she could not go to bed with a stranger right away, and she appreciated Luis's willingness to wait as long as she wanted. In the morning, Julia brought Luis breakfast in bed, and he learned something new about her. It turns out that she also drinks coffee, although in her correspondence, she said she preferred tea. Julia said that her sister read all her letters, and she didn't want Luis to know that Julia liked coffee. They began to lead a quiet married life to get to know each other better, and finally, Julia allowed Luis to come to bed with her. From then on, their daily routine became more varied. Luis was happier than ever. He shared this with his business partner, and he wanted to see Julia again because she hadn't been seen in public for a long time. Luis invited him to a theater that was coming to town soon. During the performance, something strange happened to Julia. When one of the actors appeared, she became agitated. During the break, Julia apologized to everyone and walked out. Luis followed her and saw her talking to the actor backstage. However, she didn't tell Luis anything about this incident, only tried to distract him with her passion. After a while, Luis received a letter from Julia's sister, Emily. She asked him to write at least a little bit about how Julia was settling in at the new place. She is worried about her and even contacted the local embassy to find out where her sister disappeared to. Luis convinces her to write back, and Julia agrees. At night, she has a nightmare, and Luis comes to her to comfort his wife. He sees several scars on her back. Julia was going to send a letter to Emily, but Luis volunteered to take it to the post office himself. Then he took his wife to the bank and agreed to give her any amount of money for her personal needs. Julia was just about to go to the tailor to have new dresses made for her. One day on the street, Luis encounters Walter, who introduces himself as a private detective. Walter is also engaged to Emily. She asked him to come and see how Julia is doing in her new place. Luis convinces him that Julia is fine, but Walter would still like to see for himself. Luis has to invite him to visit. When Luis gets home, he forgets about the private detective because his wife thanks him in various ways because she has received fabrics for future dresses. Luis wants to know what Julia keeps in her chest, but she won't let him see it and says she lost the key. Luis then hugs her and smells the cigars. Julia admits that she tried to smoke. After a while, Luis mentions Walter and says that he is coming over for dinner. Julia seems to be fine with it, but immediately afterwards, she becomes nervous. Even the singing of her bird begins to irritate her. After this incident, the maid finds the bird dead. Luis begins to suspect something, and his suspicion is confirmed by Emily. She comes to his work to find out what happened to her sister. Emily received Julia's letter, but she was sure it was written by another woman. She showed the letter to Luis, and he realized that his Julia and his sister Emily were two different women. Luis arrives home to find that Julia has left, taking all her things. He opens her chest, and there are photos of the real Julia and her clothes. Luis goes to the bank, where he finds out that his wife has withdrawn almost all the money from his account. He is desperate, and he can't find a place to live. Luis starts drinking alcohol and going to questionable places. He really loved Julia, and now he is suffering because she betrayed him. In one of the establishments, Walter sits down with Luis. He tells him that he is looking for his sister Emily, and Luis asks him to find his wife. The two of them go in search of her and find out that Julia is staying at a hotel. Luis and Walter also stay there. While Luis was distracted, his partner took his gun and replaced the live rounds with blanks. He didn't want him to kill his wife when he found her. Luis meets his fugitive wife at a hotel. Here she is resting with a certain Colonel Vors. He knows her as Bonnie. Luis tracks Bonnie down and appears at the moment when she is writing a letter to her accomplice, who helped arrange for Bonnie to become Luis's wife. They met Julia on the ship, and when Bonnie learned about the purpose of the trip, she told Billy about it. And after a while, he said that Julia had had an accident. They planned to rob Luis Vargas of his money. Bonnie gave the money to Billy and left. She said that she started falling in love with Luis, and that's why she ran away. In addition, he made her write a letter to Emily, which meant that the deception had to be revealed sooner or later. Luis also fell in love with Bonnie, so he couldn't kill her. Luis spends the night with her, and in the morning, Bonnie tells him about her life. She and Billy grew up in an orphanage, both became actors, and at some point took up thieving. They robbed rich and lonely men. The colonel was supposed to be Bonnie's new victim, but when he came to see her in the morning, Luis sent him away. Luis tried to get rid of Walter, who was also looking for Bonnie in connection with Julia's disappearance. However, it was not so easy. Walter found their new home, came there, and made it clear that he was also in love with Bonnie. He and Luis grabbed for a gun. Luis accidentally fired, and Walter fell to the floor. Then several more shots were fired, after which the detective did not get up. Seeing this, Bonnie sent Luis to the train station to get tickets, and she decided to get rid of the detective's body. But suddenly, Walter came back to life. It was her partner, Billy. He knew that Luis' gun was empty, so he pretended that he had been shot. Billy wants Bonnie to get back into the business and rob Luis to the end, because he still has his company, a share in which he can sell to his partner. Billy wants that money, and he convinces Bonnie to help him. When it's all over, Bonnie will have to kill Luis. Billy has convinced her that this businessman will never be able to live her life, and she will be superfluous in his world. When Luis returns, he and Bonnie leave, and Billy follows. One night, Bonnie can't wake up from a nightmare and decides to try to earn money in a different way. She teaches Luis some secret signs that will come in handy at a card game. However, when they tried to cheat the experienced players, their plan was quickly discovered. Luis was beaten and thrown out into the street, and Bonnie had to pay with her body for the dishonest game. After that, Luis realized that he had no other way to get money. He has to sell his part of the company, and then he and Bonnie will have something to live on. Luis is sure that the police are after him because he killed a private detective. That's why he keeps his money a secret. Meanwhile, Bonnie meets Billy. He leaves another scar on her back as a sign of the successful completion of another case. Luis has returned with the money. The only thing left for the woman to do is to kill him and take all the cash. Bonnie pretends that there are rats in their house and goes to get poison late at night. Luis follows her and sees Bonnie discussing his murder with Billy. When she returns home, she finds her husband in the dark. Bonnie pours him coffee, and Luis realizes that the drink is poisoned. He calls his wife for a frank conversation, and she tells him about her and Bill's plan. Convincing Bonnie that he truly loved her, the deceived Luis drinks the poisoned coffee, but the girl decides to save him. She takes her husband out of the house so that Billy does not find him. However, he tracks them down and threatens to kill Bonnie. Luis has to shoot him. This time, the revolver contains live ammunition. When witnesses to the murder appear, Bonnie takes the gun from the man and finishes off Billy. For Luis, she asks to bring a doctor because he has received a dose of poison. Bonnie is arrested. She told this story to the priest who came to absolve her of her sins before she was put to death. The young priest is concerned about Bonnie and even falls in love with her in his own way. For her sake, he commits a crime and gives her his clothes so that Bonnie can escape from the prison unnoticed. After escaping, she finds Luis, and the two of them make a living playing cards. Bonnie tells Luis what cards the other players are holding. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to the channel, like us, and be sure to click on the bell to stay up to date with our new videos.